Red Bull has a secret weapon that no one in the paddock was expecting. The Red Bull Ford engine, built in the first year of in-house production, has been ranked as the best internal combustion engine of the entire Formula One grid in 2026. A finding that has left all rivals completely stunned. The power of this unit is so superior that it has allowed Red Bull to do something unthinkable. At some circuits, the team deliberately chose to run more aerodynamic downforce than was optimal, knowing the engine would compensate for the extra drag with its raw power. No other team in the championship can afford this luxury. And the most surprising fact is that this engine was built in Red Bull's very first year of activity as a power unit manufacturer, a result that overturned the predictions of those who thought the Milton Keynes team would need at least 2 or 3 seasons to reach the level of historic engine manufacturers like Mercedes and Ferrari. But just as the Formula One world was absorbing this revelation, Red Bull dropped 2 more bombshells that could completely change the balance of the grid for 2027. The first blow came from the personnel market. Gianpiero Lambiase, Max Verstappen's race engineer and one of his closest friends in the paddock, confirmed his departure to McLaren. The man who communicated with Verstappen over the radio in every session, who knew every nuance of his driving style, who knew exactly how to manage the Dutch champion's moments of frustration, will leave Red Bull to join the rival team by 2028 at the latest. This loss is devastating not only from a technical standpoint, but also from a human one, because the bond between Lambiase and Verstappen went well beyond a professional relationship. The two had built an almost telepathic communication system that allowed Verstappen to receive the right information at the exact right moment during the most critical phases of every race. Losing this synergy is a blow that no replacement will easily be able to replicate. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with the name of the driver who you think will dominate the second half of the season, because the upcoming revelations about the Ford engine and Red Bull's strategic moves will completely change your view of this World Championship. Red Bull, however, has not been sitting idly by. In just 2 weeks from the start of the summer break, the team pulled off 2 market moves that shook the entire paddock. The first is the recruitment of Gwen Legrue, the young driver development advisor who worked at Mercedes. Legrue is considered the person who discovered and brought to Formula One the talent of Kimi Antonelli, the current World Championship leader. Bringing her to Red Bull to lead the young driver program, effectively replacing Helmut Marko, who retired at the end of 2025, is a strategic move of enormous scope. Red Bull is literally taking from Mercedes the person who built their future champion. It's a clear signal that the Milton Keynes team is planning not just for the present, but for the next decade of Formula One. The second blow is even more significant for the present. According to the German newspaper Bild, Tom McCullough is about to leave Aston Martin, where he held the role of performance director, to join Red Bull. McCullough has 13 years of experience with the team through its previous incarnations as Racing Point and Force India. If confirmed, McCullough could take on the role of direct communication with Verstappen during races, although it is not yet clear whether he will take only that position or whether he will also take on the role of head of race engineering, the function Lambiase has held since 2022. The choice of a professional with 13 years of experience in the paddock shows that Red Bull is looking for someone with the maturity needed to manage a demanding driver like Verstappen. Like this video, because now comes the technical part explaining why the Red Bull Ford engine could be the key to completely turning this season around. Technical analyst Paolo Filicetti has published a detailed report that reveals exactly where Red Bull excels and where it continues to struggle. The Red Bull Ford engine has emerged as the best internal combustion unit among all the new power units of 2026. Its power is so superior that the team has been able to partially offset the aerodynamic shortcomings of the RB22 simply by exploiting the engine's overwhelming superiority on the straights and in the DRS activation zones. In Austria, Verstappen came within just over a second and a half of victory, finishing second behind George Russell of Mercedes. That was the race in which Red Bull came closest to winning this season. But the fundamental problem remains aerodynamics. Downforce is the main weak point of the RB22, and its distribution leaves much to be desired, with a particularly serious shortfall at the rear of the car. The additional elements fitted to the rear wing, which initially seemed like a temporary solution for slow circuits like Monaco, have become a permanent fixture at every circuit, showing that the problem is structural and requires a complete overhaul of several components, starting with the floor of the car, which is the top priority for the engineers. The situation is so critical that in the last races, Red Bull has reduced the gap to leaders Mercedes from over a second to just a few tenths of a second. But this improvement has come almost entirely from work on the aerodynamics, and not from the engine, which was already superior from the start of the season. There is, however, a regulatory obstacle that could block Red Bull's revival. The FIA's ADUO system, which governs engine development opportunities, has determined that the Red Bull Ford power unit is the fastest on the grid. This paradoxically means that Red Bull has less room for engine development than Mercedes and Ferrari, who are receiving greater upgrade opportunities for their power units. The engine advantage that has so far kept Red Bull afloat could therefore progressively shrink in the second half of the season, right when the team will need it most. It's a regulatory mechanism that punishes those who excel and rewards those who are behind, creating a paradox that could wipe out Red Bull's biggest competitive advantage in the race for its first win of the season. Comment below whether you think the Ford engine will be enough for Red Bull to finally secure its first win of the season, or whether you believe the rivals will close the gap before the team manages to solve its aerodynamic problems. Former Formula One driver Stefan Johansson offered a brutally honest perspective on Verstappen's situation. He said he understands the Dutchman's frustration, but that the reality is very simple. There has never been a world champion who didn't have the best car. This is the fundamental truth of Formula One, and no talent, however extraordinary, can change this law of motorsport. Johansson acknowledged that Verstappen continues to work miracles in most races and remains an incredibly gifted driver. But he stressed that without the right car, wins simply don't come. Johansson also recalled that Verstappen has won at least one race in every single season since his debut with Toro Rosso in 2015, and that a similar drought situation only occurred at mid-season in 2017, when the Dutchman finally managed to win at Sepang, a circuit that curiously returns to the calendar this very year. Red Bull's situation presents a fascinating contradiction. On one hand, the team has the best internal combustion engine on the grid, is making aggressive moves in the personnel market, and has reduced the gap to leaders Mercedes from over a second to just a few tenths. On the other hand, it remains the only top team without a win in 2026. Its lead driver is threatening to leave. The engineer who knew Verstappen best is moving to McLaren, and the regulations could reduce the engine's advantage at the worst possible moment. It's a team that is simultaneously winning and losing on different fronts, and the final outcome will depend on which of these opposing forces prevails over the last 12 races of the championship. The second half of the season will show whether the power of the Red Bull Ford engine and the strategic personnel moves will be enough to turn around a season that has so far been the most disappointing in the recent history of the Milton Keynes team. Verstappen has won at least one race in every single season since his debut in 2015. Breaking this streak in 2026 would be a very hard blow for the Dutchman and for Red Bull. Time is running out, and every race that passes without a win makes the situation heavier for Verstappen and for the entire team. The pressure is rising to unsustainable levels, and the summer break could be the last moment of calm before a storm that will change the face of Formula One. See you in the next video.